What followed was a dark age of reduced population, lost literacy, and fragmented communities. But from that darkness, something extraordinary would emerge. Greece, a land of jagged coastlines, olive groves, and mountain ranges that seemed to pierce the sky, became the cradle of something the world had never seen before, a way of thinking, governing, and living that would echo through every century that followed. The story of Greece is not simply the story of one nation. It is the story of humanity's first great leap toward reason, beauty, and self-governance. It begins thousands of years before the golden temples were built, before the philosophers gathered in open-air markets, and before armies marched under the banner of a single Macedonian king. It begins with people who looked at the world and dared to ask why. The earliest traces of Greek civilization stretch back to around 3000 BCE, when the Cycladic culture flourished on the islands of the Aegean. These early inhabitants carved elegant marble figurines, sailed between islands in wooden boats, and established trade networks that connected distant communities. Then came the Minoans on the island of Crete, a sophisticated Bronze Age civilization that built elaborate palace complexes at Knossos, decorated their walls with vivid frescoes of dolphins and bull-leaping athletes, and developed one of the earliest writing systems in the region. The Minoans were traders, artists, and builders, and their influence spread across the Aegean world. Trade flourished, ideas traveled, and the Greek world grew larger and more interconnected than ever before. Unlike the great centralized empires of the ancient Near East, Greece developed as a collection of independent cities, each with its own government, culture, laws, and identity. Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Thebes, and dozens of others competed, cooperated, and clashed in a dynamic that drove innovation at every level of society. Sparta became legendary for its military discipline. From childhood, Spartan boys were taken from their families and trained in a brutal system called the agoge, designed to forge soldiers of unmatched endurance and loyalty. Spartan women, unlike their counterparts in most ancient societies, were educated, physically trained, and held a degree of social freedom that astonished the rest of the Greek world. Athens took a different path. Under the reforms of leaders like Solon and later Cleisthenes, Athens began experimenting with a radical new idea, that citizens should have a direct voice in the decisions that governed their lives. This was democracy, a word derived from the Greek demos, meaning people, and kratos, meaning power. It was imperfect by modern standards, limited to free male citizens and excluding women, slaves, and foreigners. The Greeks were not simply building a civilization. They were building the intellectual framework through which all future civilizations would understand themselves. Following the Persian Wars, in which the Greek city-states united to repel the massive armies of Darius and Xerxes, most famously at the battles of Marathon, Thermopylae, and Salamis, Athens emerged as the dominant cultural and intellectual force in the Greek world. Under the leadership of Pericles, Athens entered its golden age. The Acropolis was rebuilt with breathtaking monuments, including the Parthenon, a temple to the goddess Athena that remains one of the most recognizable structures ever built. Its columns, proportions, and sculptural programs set a standard for architectural beauty that architects have studied and imitated for over 2,000 years. But the Golden Age was not only about stone and marble, it was an age of the mind. Socrates walked the streets of Athens, engaging citizens in relentless questioning, challenging assumptions, and insisting that the unexamined life was not worth living. He wrote nothing himself, but his student Plato recorded his dialogues and built upon his ideas to create a comprehensive philosophical system that addressed the nature of reality, justice, beauty, and the ideal state. Greek influence had become a global force. The Peloponnesian War, a devastating conflict between Athens and Sparta that lasted nearly 3 decades, weakened both powers and left the Greek world fractured and exhausted. Into this vacuum stepped a kingdom from the north, Macedonia. Under King Philip II, Macedonia unified much of Greece through a combination of military genius and diplomatic skill. But it was his son who would carry the Greek world to its absolute limits. Alexander III of Macedon, known to history as Alexander the Great, was tutored by Aristotle himself and inherited his father's kingdom at the age of 20. Within 13 years, he had conquered an empire stretching from Greece through Persia, Egypt, Central Asia, and into the northwestern reaches of the Indian subcontinent, the largest empire the world had ever seen. Alexander did not simply conquer. He spread Greek language, culture, art, and philosophy across an enormous swath of the ancient world, a process historians call Hellenization. Cities named Alexandria were founded from Egypt to Afghanistan, becoming centers of learning and cultural exchange. Their questions became our questions. Their discoveries became our foundation. Their civilization, though it rose and fell like all civilizations must, never truly ended. It simply became the world we live in. The Roman legions moved steadily eastward, and in 146 BCE, the Roman general Lucius Mummius sacked the city of Corinth, marking the effective end of Greek political independence. Greece became a Roman province called Achaia. Yet something remarkable happened in the aftermath of conquest. The Romans, practical and militaristic as they were, fell deeply in love with Greek culture. The Roman poet Horace captured it perfectly when he wrote that captive Greece had taken her savage conqueror captive. Roman elites learned Greek, studied Greek philosophy, collected Greek art, and modeled their own literature, architecture, and religion on Greek precedents. The gods of Olympus were absorbed into the Roman pantheon.